I ultimately trapped an entitled woman in an elevator for a full half-hour. And the best part is, her own daughter told me to make her suffer. It all started with a simple repair and a single, barely filled grocery bag. My name is Alex. And I'm an elevator technician. When they break, I fix them. When parts get old, I replace them. It's a straightforward job. Usually. On this particular day, I was on a job to replace a worn-out emergency light in a 3-stop residential elevator. Now, back in the day, it was common practice to use the emergency light's battery to also power the elevator's alarm siren. But with modern LED lights running on different voltages, you can't just plug and play. This meant I had to wire everything up from scratch: a new battery, a new siren, the whole setup. It's not a huge deal, but it definitely takes more time than a simple swap. I started on the ground floor, hung up my out-of-order signs on all 3 levels, and got to work. About 5 minutes in, just as I had the old light assembly apart, she walked in. Let's call her Brenda. She was a woman in her mid-40s, walking perfectly fine, and carrying a single grocery bag that looked like it held little more than a loaf of bread and a carton of milk. "Excuse me. Is the elevator broken again?" she asked, her tone already laced with impatience. "Not exactly, ma'am," I said, holding up the new emergency light for her to see. "I'm replacing this because the old one wasn't working anymore. This will probably take about an hour to complete." Just then, her daughter, a teenager of about 15 who I'll call Chloe, walked in. Brenda's eyes darted from me to her single light bag. "How am I supposed to get my groceries upstairs?" she demanded. I gave her bag a pointed look, then met her gaze with my best "are you kidding me" expression. Chloe, clearly mortified, jumped in. "Mom. Seriously. Take the stairs. It's 2 floors," she said, sighing heavily. "No," Brenda snapped, her voice sharp. "I pay for this elevator. And I need it now." Chloe just shook her head. "I'm going up," she muttered, and took the stairs without another word. Brenda then turned her glare back to me. "How long is this going to take?" "Like I said, ma'am. About an hour," I repeated, my own patience starting to wear thin. To my disbelief, the woman then sat her ass down on a bench in the hallway, crossing her arms to wait for me to finish. Brenda made her decision at that moment, settling onto the hallway bench with an air of defiance. She was completely unaware that this single act of stubbornness, this refusal to climb a mere 2 flights of stairs, would lead directly to her own self-inflicted confinement. I just shook my head and got back to my work in the cabin. I didn't hurry my pace one bit. I mounted the new emergency light to the ceiling, methodically organized my tools, and then packed my things to head 1 floor up, where I needed to work on top of the elevator car to complete the wiring. As I stepped out, she was on me instantly. "You done yet?" "No, ma'am," I said. "I still have to wire things up on top of the elevator." "No. I can see you're done. You're packing your things," she insisted. "Yes," I explained slowly, as if to a child. "I have to take my tool bag 1 floor up so I can start on the wiring from there. Can't I just use it now?" she pleaded. "No, ma'am. You can't. I said firmly. There's exposed wiring up there. If you use it now, you could cause a short and you will get stuck. It's really not safe. Fine. She huffed. And sat back down on the bench. Fuming. I grabbed my bag and headed for the stairs. But the second I was standing in front of the first floor elevator door, I heard it, the distinct sound of the ground floor door sliding shut. Sure enough, Brenda had slipped into the elevator and pressed the button. This move revealed Brenda's greatest fatal flaw, her profound entitlement. A belief that her convenience trumped even explicit warnings of physical danger. It was this arrogance that ultimately sealed her fate, trapping her in the very machine she so desperately demanded. I wasn't having it. I pulled out my emergency key. And the moment I heard the elevator machinery engage, I inserted the key into the door lock. I gave it a turn, which instantly cut the safety chain circuit, bringing the elevator to a sudden, jarring halt between floors. A terrified scream echoed from inside the car. I pulled the door open, looked down into the gap, and in my most fake surprised voice, I yelled, "Oh no! What have you done?" As I said it, I calmly reached down and pressed the main emergency stop button on top of the car. Now, this thing really wasn't going anywhere. This is exactly why I said the elevator is unsafe to use right now. I told her loudly. You've made a real mess up here. I'll do my best to get it working. But I don't know how long it's going to take. Of course, there was no mess at all. But I couldn't resist teaching her a little lesson. She erupted into a storm of swearing and yelling. I'll be right back, I said over the noise. I have to go to the engine room to see if I can get this thing running again. I closed the door and headed up to the second floor, where her daughter, Chloe, had come out of her apartment, drawn by her mother's shrieking. I quickly explained what Brenda had done. Oh no, Chloe said, raising her voice for effect. Please get her out of there. But then she stepped closer and whispered conspiratorially. Don't hurry. Make her suffer. Music to my ears. One commenter on my story later summed her up perfectly. Wow. That daughter is cool. I gave Chloe a smile and a thumbs up before heading to the engine room. First, I called my supervisor to explain the situation, just in case a complaint was filed. Then, the fun began. I went to the engine room and started playing with the fuses, occasionally cutting the power and plunging her into total darkness. Since I hadn't connected the new emergency light yet, I let her stew in there for a good half hour. As another person later commented, I was letting her discover what solitary confinement feels like. Finally, I switched off the emergency stop I had activated earlier. The elevator automatically synchronized and returned to the lowest floor. I went down and waited for the doors to open. Please, I said with stern sincerity. Don't ever do that again. Brenda, pale as a sheet and visibly shaking, just nodded. And no, I won't, she stammered. She scurried out, took the stairs, and disappeared into her apartment. I never heard from her again. With her gone, I calmly finished my job and left the building with a huge smile on my face. As someone later put it, I had elevated revenge to an art form. Now, I know some people might have concerns about safety, and I want to be clear. Every action I took was well thought out, and there was never any real risk to anyone. I intentionally left the elevator able to move at first because I needed it to position the car correctly to access the top of it. I had tested all the necessary safety systems before I even started working. The out-of-order tags were placed over the call buttons on every floor. And by starting my work on the ground floor, anyone entering the building could see me. The moment I moved to work on top of the car, I was prepared to use the hard stop button to disable it. Which is exactly what I did once she forced the issue. I was in control the entire time. In the end, it's a powerful reminder that patience is a virtue. And showing a little respect for the people whose expertise you rely on can save you from a whole lot of trouble. So, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have let her out right away? Or do you think the lesson she learned was perfectly fitting for her actions? Let me know in the comments.